the notion is that a robust, vibrant private sector is critical for the sustainable economic development of any country. So if I were to think about it, simply, so if we have more private businesses, of course we create more jobs, there's more employment, there's more taxes that go back to the government. The government's able to improve services that improves the quality of life for people, and they're also able to use that income. We won't talk about what the government chooses to use their money on. That's a different subject altogether. But the thinking is that they use this money to improve the quality of life for people, but also to improve a lot of the services like the electricity, the water, and so all of these things, they cost the business. When people try and set up businesses, all these costs, these overheads that put people off from building their own businesses. So that's kind of like a very simplified view of how private sector is important. So at ADB, well, in the Pacific, we've got a number of different areas where interventions, where we're trying to support private sector development. And some of you may have heard of PSDI, which is the Private Sector Development Initiative. They're across the 14 countries. And their main focus is to create an enabling business environment. And some of these words seem quite complicated, but what they're doing is they're just looking at how the laws, for example, there's a lot of outdated laws. So how can we create an environment that makes it easier for people to do business, to set up businesses, for investors to come into the Pacific. We also have the Business Investment Facility that provides advisory services to small to medium enterprises. So say, for example, you have a shop owner that's been operating for a few years and he wants to expand to open a bigger supermarket. He has to go and, of course, access finance. So going to a bank to access finance can be quite daunting, first of all, but also you need to present a proposal in a certain way, and that's not a skill that a lot of small business owners have. So Australia has funded, I think it's about 15 million, if I'm not wrong, a project for 5 years. They're based in Sydney, the BIF team, to support these business owners. So our consultants go in, sit with them, put together proposals, and then they're able to access finance. So they're doing really well. And just touch on the last one, private sector operations department that focus on the bigger transactions. So, partnerships with the government and the private sector. So a lot of deals go through there. So there's a lot of work that we're doing. Now, when we think about that, that's great. But then there's another sector that sometimes goes, that's sometimes marginalized, to pick up that word again, and that's the microfinance sector. So these are the market vendors, the ladies who are selling handicraft. And so a lot of these people are not literate. So the thought of even going to a bank to access money, like, it's not only daunting for them, while they might be willing to, on the other hand, the institutions themselves are not so open to lending to this sector. So the Microfinance Expansion Project looks at developing the microfinance sector in Papua New Guinea. Yeah? So I hope that gives you a little bit of context behind this project. So very briefly, so it's just over 24 million between contributions from the PNG government, Australian government, and ADB. And like I said, supports the development of the microfinance sector. The impact, so like I talked about, private sector growth. And then the outcome, so what we want to see is that partner financial institutions, and I might use the word PFIs as I go along, so that's what it is, that they provide financial services to an increased number of clients in PNG. So in that outcome, there's two things there. So one is providing financial services sustainably. Okay, so we're talking about small microfinance institutions here, and you can imagine, the situation with capacity, but also to an increased number of clients, which means there's work in awareness to increase the number of clients that we have. Yeah, so I love this project because it works at both ends, both the demand in the customer side and the supply in the bank. So of course, once we build the demand, the more people become financially literate, and the more they start to want to build their businesses. We need to have the financial institutions ready. So we're working at both ends. Yeah. So how are we doing this this work? How are we implementing this? So there's three And I'm really summarizing this, okay? So we have the project paper, the technical paper on the website, so I've tried to summarize it as best as I could. So one, like I said, through customers, one of our outputs is centered around financial literacy training, okay? So creating the demand, we need to educate our people on the importance of money, why you should save, why you should budget, why you shouldn't hide your money under the bed, you know, all those sorts of things, budget, savings. So that's the customer side. Then, like I mentioned, we also work with the partner financial institutions, the PFIs, so capacity building and product development. What products do they have that suit our customers? That's another gap that was found. Are these products useful for the customers, or are they just, you know, just the basic products that you would have? So there's been a lot of customization that's happened too. And also a risk share facility. So this works similar to a guarantee of sorts. So while they were scoping this project, I hope that's the right word to use, they found that the financial institutions said that they don't want to lend to the microfinance sector because the perception is that they're not going to pay their loans back. So there isn't any hard evidence really behind this, because if you learn more about, there's a South Pacific Business Development that's here in Samoa too, I suppose. They've got very low write-off loss rates. But then the perception generally is that. And so as part of this project, there's $5 million US that's been put aside for the financial institutions to be able to draw on if these loans go bad. Yeah? So to encourage them to lend to this sector. And there's also some work that we're doing with the regulator and just supervision over these microfinance institutions. Because they're not at the commercial bank level, it's also important that, you know, once people start putting their money in there and using their products, that their money is safe. Of course, very, very important. And so those are just the impact and the outcome that I've talked about. So that's just a brief background of what this project is about. So on to how we're using partnerships. So like Emma said in the beginning, these are partnership agreements. And I would think that they're probably the simplest modality, I would think. Unless I'm wrong, someone can correct me if you know better. But it's a very, very simple way of working with CSOs. So this area in particular, the customers and the output around financial literacy training, is where we use these partnerships the most. We have used them in other areas, but I'll just focus on this one. So we use these partnerships to deliver financial literacy training. The project target was to train 130,000 people in PNG all across the country. We are about 15 months out of the project closure, and the number's about 180,000 now that's already been trained, so hugely successful. We've got 12 partnerships at the moment at all different levels, and the partnerships are managed by CEFI, which is the Center of Excellence for Financial Inclusion. And I added this just this morning because I heard a question about, I think you asked Clara, about who kind of manages this, like how do they talk with government. So as part of the project, CEFI was set up, and CEFI implements the financial inclusion strategy for PNG, and they're also an implementing partner for our project. So they are the ones that issue these partnership agreements, and so it's a very clean way, and it's a great way of the government, the country themselves taking ownership of this. I've just put up some examples here. So these are just a few. There's 6 here, so I've just got, we only have one international one, that's World Vision. From what I understand, there's more, and I think, if I'm not wrong, that's in Bougainville. So what happens is, World Vision is going to do some work in a particular area, and because CEFI has done such a great job of creating awareness of the importance of financial literacy and making a lot of these connections, they've signed an agreement to do financial literacy training in the communities that they're working in, so that's fantastic. And as you can see, we have some national level, so we have this is Nationwide Microbank, is also known as MyBank. So they deliver it as part of their banking services. And the CEFI's been driving this a lot with the microfinance institutions, explaining to them that it's a responsible way for us to be lending money and not just developing products and then, forcing people to take up products. And then also we have community level. We've got, of course, the women's groups are always great to work with, and the church network. So this church network is probably one of our biggest partners because they're all over the country. And we have different types of trainers, of course, within here that I'll talk about later. So that's just a snapshot of some of the partners we have. So I'm going to talk a bit about how we engage with partners. And I don't know whether you can see that properly. Well, I'll talk you through it. So I thought rather than just talk about how we get them on board, because it's quite a simple process, we'll talk about how we engage throughout the whole process and what we've learned from that, because we've got some great lessons. So first we do an expressions of interest, very simple. Just goes in the papers and then they see it and they write in. There's a form that they fill. There's no requirement for them to access the consulting management system, CMS. So they just fill in all these questions, why they think they can do it, why we should trust them, blah, 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 all of that. So that's response to expressions of interest, comes in, and then we do assessment. So this is done by the CEFI team. And of course, they get ADB, the project officer, involved as well. So we look at what area they're suggesting they go into. So we're very conscious that they're not asking to go into an area where they don't have any experience in. So they're not from POM and they decide, from Port Moresby, and they decide they want to go into Bougainville or somewhere. So they have to show that they know about the area, that they have a reach or footprint already. They also have to show that they have the administrative capability, when there's invoices to be made, because there's some reporting that we expect them to do. So they need to show all those basic things. So they're not complex things. We don't expect them to come and tell us that they have this, like a fancy MIS system or anything like that. So we want to encourage them as much as possible to come. There have been instances where some haven't quite met all the requirements, and CEFI, because it's still under the project, they're in a position to support them a bit to help them build some of the space areas. So like the administrative part, for example, they might not have any reporting capability yet. So CEFI supports them in that area and brings them on board, gives them a partnership agreement. So contracting is also under them. Contracting is, again, very simple. We just do like a MOU, if you like, of sorts, contract. And what we agree at that stage is how many people they're going to train. So we pay them based on by head. So it's probably it's about 40 kina, around 40 kina per head. So we agree, okay, you're going to do this area, there's this many people there. Let's agree on how many people you're going to train, might be 200. And this is how much we'll pay you, and this is when we'll pay you. So it's not a complex agreement at all. And so that's decided in that area. So once that's done, then we're going to mobilization, which is, okay, now we know the terms of this agreement. Let's decide when you're going to do your training. One thing I forgot to mention in the assessment is that we also look at the type of trainers they're proposing. And with the church, a lot of the pastors actually do the training, and they're quite confident speakers, which is great. Do I have some words under here? Okay, sorry about that, yeah. So those are all the different types of contracts that we have. So with NGOs, community-based organizations, and some corporates, like I said, the banks. Also BSP, for those who know, Bank of the South Pacific, they also deliver this financial literacy training. Agreement on number of people, and then the assessment. Yeah. Financial capability just means that they are not coming to us with $0 in their bank. Like we don't expect them to, be a multi-million organization, but at least they have some finances. Adequate trainers, right? And so we schedule training of the trainers. It's a 3-day course. That's delivered by MEP, the Microfinance Expansion Project. And when I mean that, it's delivered by the project, but through CEFI. So our trainers sit at CEFI, and then they train the partners, Yeah, so they do a 3-day training. Now, at that training, the trainers are then expected to design their implementation plans. Where are you going to train first? In the training of the trainers too, the first session, before they talk about any financial literacy, there's training done on training skills. Because, like I said, they come with when you think about pastors in the church, they don't so much train as, they talk to the audience a lot. So we need to adjust that thinking a bit. So in the first half, they do a lot of, these are the important skills that you need, these are the different ways in which you can train. So there you can see, again, very, very basic, right? Very basic. So there's a lot of cartoons that they've drawn. So the team at the top, they have designed their own. So they go away and they think about, so it's a very interactive session. It's not just our trainers talking to them, but they're expected, by the end of the 3 days, they're expected to present, this is how the approach we're going to use. These are the different resources that we're going to use. And the trainers then will say, yes, that's okay, or no, that's not okay. So it's not that everybody just goes smoothly through the process and presents whatever they want to. Yeah, so once they go through the 3 days, and then we have the training of the delivery to the communities, yeah? So they go out. I've put their awareness through posters and radio. So once they're ready to go out, they have to create awareness in the community. This is when we're coming. They put out posters. They go through their different networks to let them know. And so this is what it looks like. Again, like this is the. I'm just walking around. That's the. Those are the sort of people that we're training. So they're sitting in huts. So it's not. They don't have, our trainers don't have the luxury of being able to use fancy animated ones like mine. So they have to use a lot of these innovative ways. And like when I wanted to make sure I put that point there when I said these methods are required for the illiterate, because when we're talking about illiterate, this is not just not knowing how to read. This is like seeing a number one and not knowing that it's a number one. So we're talking about that level. So when they're delivering the training, they use a lot of games. So they know that this is 2, but if you write the number 2, they won't know what the number 2 is. So it's a whole, different way of thinking, really, in trying to come up with ways to deliver this training. And I love that when we use, I love this picture also because it just shows how when we're using these partners, how relevant it is, how they can just, they get down on the ground, they do what they need to do, which is not necessarily something that us who are not of that culture would understand here. And so that's on top, they're doing some kind of game, I don't know what it is. But yes, that's delivery of training. And then we have graduation and bank account opening. So after I think theirs is about 3 days, no, there's 2 days of training. And then they do graduation. Now, PNG, it's, I'm sure you know how big and vast it is. So when we have these agreements, I should mention, we are dependent on these agreements to deliver our project. It's not a nice to have for us at all. Like we're talking about close to 8.5 million population in PNG, and we have CEFI that's like maybe 5 people. There's no way we'd be able to, reach a lot of people. So when we have graduations, and when I first, heard about this, I almost fell off my chair. 3,000 to 4,000 people at graduations in PNG. So because there's so many, and it's so expensive to get to areas, they have all these different trainings, and then they all come together, say every quarter or so, every 2 to 3 months. They come and they have their graduations together. And it's such an exciting time. I mean, you can imagine, because these guys are like in the interior, so they come, and there's guys from the Australian High Commission that come, and there's music, and it's so much fun. And we've got the financial institutions that also come there to talk about the bank products, and you can do this, you can open this, and so that's where they come. And they go back with their certificates, and because a lot of them don't have proof of identification, those certificates are also used to open their bank accounts, which is really important, which is a great way which we've also been able to partner with the financial institutions to allow that. Now after this, so then the CEFI do monitoring and reporting. So there's two types of monitoring that they do, is off-site and on-site. Every 6 months, because we have details of those who've been through the training, including their mobile phone numbers. They call them from the office in Port Moresby just to chat, how do you go, did you open an account, all this and that. Now, I've put an asterisk there because we have a problem with the changing of phone numbers. I know that's very common in a lot of countries in the Pacific, so it's so cheap to get a SIM now. Sometimes Digicel is just handing out SIMs for free. So as soon as they can't afford their credit, and then it just goes into lapse and they just get a new one, and so that causes some complications for us, but also for the financial institutions, because once they try and collecting arrears and things like that, it's very, very difficult. And then on-site every 6 months. So when we go on-site, they check the records, they double-check to make sure that what they've told us is actually what they've captured, and just to validate all this information. At this stage, they also provide some training. Our trainers actually extend beyond just financial literacy training. So when they go into this monitoring, when they see areas that could be improved, they also do some training there. Like, this is a better way in which you can store this information and things like that to strengthen their capability. I've put key benefits because I feel like there's so many benefits. But these are just the key ones. One is the flexibility, and so this is, when I'm talking about flexibility, I'm talking about using this type of agreement. So flexibility, so it's very, very easy to change terms in these agreements. All it is like, if we need you to do another 10,000, we just agree, come together, just stick it at the back of their partnership agreement, and that's it. It can be done as fast as the CEFI administration team can do it. These agreements also, unlike the very fancy one that my colleague Deborah talked about, it can take 2 weeks, less than a month to put these together. Just advertise, it's open for 2 weeks, comes back, do the assessment, then you put the template together, and that's it, the sign go. Also accountability. The trainers using this, and this is extending out of the agreement itself, but using this modality, because the people are from that area, you find that they're very passionate about progression in their region, and so when they have this, it's more. ADB it's not so much, or ADB has told us to implement this. This is ADB's project, but when you hear them doing the training, they talk a lot about this is what we need for our children. Like, this is why this is good, and so they are the ones that hold the accountability, which is fantastic. And then also the people that they're training, when they're hearing it from their own, it makes a big difference in just the take-up. I also believe that it's got a positive influence in the quality of our operations. We've got a great relationship, and so feedback comes quite easily and bluntly sometimes. But it's great because it's information that we probably wouldn't have otherwise have gotten. This is not a good way to do this. This style doesn't work here, and so it informs changes ourselves in our own operations. Again, I have mentioned the speed of delivery of the project activities. We would not have been able to achieve this much in that time without using this modality. And then relevance in delivery, which I've mentioned also. The language that's used, the mannerisms, the consideration of culture that we wouldn't understand, especially when it's in areas that are outside of the central business districts in PNG. So key lessons. I thought I'd just stick this back up here so that it's easy to kind of see where we've learned some key lessons. Now, the training of the trainer. This is a good time to be talking about this because we're going into the next phase of this project. This project ends in December 2018. The government of PNG and Australia have already expressed an interest in doing another phase, and ADB is completely on board, which is fantastic. So we've started the planning for what that looks like, and yes, it does take that long to do. So training, one of the things we're looking at is just the business management training for these community groups. Now, keeping in mind that this is not their core function. So basic business management skills that we think they have, they don't have. So, we've had, recently we had an instance where one of the groups came back and said, we need to alter our agreement because we miscalculated how much it would take for us to go and do this training. And so that was to the tune of 5,000 USD. It's not a little amount of money. So it's important for us to help them understand how to properly estimate these costs. Also in the management of trainers that are in their teams, we've also gotten feedback from those that level below to say that they're not getting paid on time, they don't feel incentivized. Of course, when you run a business and you have employees, you need to have incentives. So there's things like that we didn't think that we'd need to help them with, that we believe is important for us to equip them with those skills. And then also a toolbox of resources for trainers. So like I said, they come together and they say, this is our plan. But what we found is that it would be very useful for us to have a toolbox of sorts to be able to give them, with the resources in it. Because as they go along and as their money starts to be used, the quality of the material starts to disintegrate a little bit. So we feel like it'd be useful if we could set up a toolbox and send them on their way with that toolbox. And similarly, for the participants, when they finish the financial literacy training, they don't take anything back with them. And so, this kind of training, this is changing mindsets, it's changing behaviors, and it's not something that can just change by one training. So we're trying to think of some creative ways so that they can take back little things that they can, put on their wall, or something that they can stick in their pocket, or something like that. And this feedback has also come from the participants, which is great, because they said, we're thinking about this, but we forgot what you told us about this. So this is fantastic feedback. This is an important one also, is the collaboration with other programs. So what we found is that there's a lot of programs and donors working in the same space, and we're not collaborating as best as possible. When we do financial literacy training, we've got a whole lot of people that talk about, we've got our gardens here, we've got so many vegetables, we don't know how to get them to the markets. So we just listen and say, okay, yes, I'm very sorry about that, and this and that. But meanwhile, we have the opportunity to be talking to these, MDF is a market development facility, Pharma is the Pacific Horticulture and Agriculture Market Access, I think it is. And so they're all working in the same area. So we're in a great position to collaborate at our level, to be able, because we're talking to the same customers, yeah? So we're educating you on finance. Yes, you have all this produce, this is who you can talk to in getting access to markets. And in the same way, the ones that they're talking to and creating market access for them, we can do financial literacy training with them. So again, another layer of partnerships is a huge opportunity there. Also our delivery strategies of our training to communities. And I love what I saw in Michael's presentation, and it made me think a lot about how, because you're absolutely right, the storytelling and just the drama and that element of it work fantastically in this context. So there has been some, but I feel like there's an opportunity for us to be more intentional about this and not just saying, that trainer came up with this drama and that's fantastic. So let's include it in the toolbox, for them to deliver. This also includes the digital agenda. So digitization is something that we'll be incorporating in the next phase. In the Solomon Islands, there's another TA that we have where we are testing financial literacy through the mobile phone. So people set up their savings account through their mobile phone, and they receive messages and prompts throughout that savings plan to encourage them. So in a place like PNG, that'll be a fantastic model for them. And then the last one, which again is very interesting, is family-centric training. So, we still do have the issues of women being, left behind and the men coming to the training. And when I said that our target is 130,000, 40% of that are meant to be women. At the moment, we're at about 180,000, well over 50% of women who have been trained, and that's fantastic. But interestingly, on some on-site visits and monitoring, there doesn't look like there's that many women there. The Australian government did their own review just recently, and they came back with all this feedback. And it does seem like on the ground the women are still being pushed aside. If somebody has to stay home and look after the kids, it's going to be the woman. So Pacific women have been talking to us about a family-centric approach. Let's do a family training. And also picking up from one of Michael's videos, it made me think about the youth, like how we can use them in this training and having that sort of approach as opposed to having training and then only one can come because one has to cook the dinner or one has to wait for the kids. Yeah, so these are these social issues that's really important that we need to incorporate into our work as well. And then the monitoring and reporting part again is there is a lot of work I feel like we need to do. This is when we're getting all these lessons, because CEFI's gotten so busy, there's so many training of the trainers that are happening, we haven't been able to continuously improve, if you like, as well as we could. It's also quite expensive to do a lot of this on-site monitoring, so it's not religiously done as much as we'd like. So we're looking at better monitoring methods and mentoring for partners. So like I said, we do some capacity building, but how can we better support them so that they can run with this on their own better? And also partnership with banks. So, if you think about financial literacy, so I talked in the beginning about private sector growth, right? So when we think of financial literacy, that's only the first step. We start talking about budgeting and saving. The thinking is that they will go back, they'll start building their savings, they'll start creating small businesses, and then, then it'll lead to private sector growth. But then the monitoring of these savings accounts are not happening, as well as we'd like. So while we say we've trained all these people, we can't confidently say that 180,000 people are saving money. Okay? And now when we go to the banks and try and get the information, because their systems are so old and it's difficult to extract, and they're so busy themselves, there's a breakdown in that area. So there's a big opportunity for us to partner better with these banks to be able to monitor this well. And at the top I've just put there, like in summary for the key lessons, I think looking at the quality of how we're delivering this program and continuous improvement is really important when we're thinking about lessons and how we can get better at these agreements.